In the middle of the 14th century, death came to Europe not with the roar of armies or the blaze of fire, but with a whisper carried on the wind, a shadow that clung to ships and cities alike. The people called it many names, the Great Pestilence, the Great Mortality. But history would remember it by one name alone: the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, it would kill more than 50 million souls, half of Europe's population, in a span so brief that it seemed as if the world itself were being unmade. Kings and beggars, priests and thieves, all fell alike. No sword could fight it, no prayer could halt it, no fortress could keep it out. It was invisible, unstoppable, and absolute. But before Europe began to rot from within, the darkness had already begun its journey, far away in the heart of Asia. Long before it reached Europe's shores, the plague was born in the vast grasslands of Central Asia. It began not with man, but with rats, and upon their backs rode the tiniest soldiers in history, fleas, infected with a deadly bacterium, Yersinia pestis. In the 1330s, along the ancient Silk Road, caravans carried spices, silk, and stories, and also death. In the city of Kaffa, a Genoese trading post on the Crimean coast, war raged between the merchants of Venice and the Mongol armies of the Golden Horde. As the Mongols besieged the city, a strange sickness swept through their ranks: boils, fever, blackened limbs, and death within days. Desperate and enraged, the Mongols catapulted their own dead over the city walls, hurling infected corpses into Kaffa. It was one of the first known acts of biological warfare. Fleeing by ship, the Genoese merchants carried the sickness westward, across the Black Sea, and into the heart of Europe. In October 1347, 12 ships docked in Messina, Sicily. By the time they arrived, nearly all aboard were dead. Those who weren't were dying. The curse had arrived. Within weeks, the ports of Genoa, Venice, and Marseille were infected. Within months, the plague devoured Florence, Paris, and London. Every ship, every merchant, every pilgrim was a carrier of doom. The symptoms came swift and merciless. First, fever and chills. Then, swelling, great black lumps that formed under the arms and groin, buboes. They burst, oozing blood and pus. The skin turned dark as veins collapsed, the body decaying before death. Some died in 3 days, others within hours. Doctors were powerless. Their so-called plague masks, grotesque beaks stuffed with herbs, did nothing. They did not yet know that the sickness spread through fleas and rats. They believed it came from miasma, poisoned air, or from God's wrath. And so cities burned incense, rang bells, and marched through streets with crosses and prayers, begging for mercy. But the plague had no ears. It was not listening. By the spring of 1348, the Black Death consumed France and the Iberian Peninsula. By summer, it had crossed the English Channel. By 1349, it reached the edges of Scandinavia. There was no escape. The dead lay in heaps. In London, carts rolled through the streets, their drivers crying, "Bring out your dead!" In Paris, corpses floated in the Seine. In Florence, the poet Giovanni Boccaccio wrote that fathers abandoned children, wives left husbands, priests refused to bury the dead, as if by being seen with the sick, one might draw death upon oneself. Pope Clement VI locked himself inside his chamber in Avignon, surrounded by fires day and night, believing the flames would purify the air. But even the church could not hide from the pestilence. Half the clergy of Europe would perish. Mass graves filled the earth. In some places, so many died that there were not enough living to bury them. The smell of decay lingered over every city. Dogs and crows feasted on the bodies. The air was thick with the stench of death and incense. And still, the living searched for meaning. Some saw it as divine punishment. the wrath of God upon a sinful world. Others saw it as the work of the devil, and some blamed each other. Fear turned to fury, and fury to hatred. Across Europe, rumors spread that the Jews had poisoned the wells, bringing death upon Christendom. In Strasbourg, Mainz, Cologne, and hundreds of towns, mobs descended upon Jewish quarters, burning, drowning, and slaughtering entire communities. Men, women, and children, thousands, killed not by plague, but by panic. The plague revealed not just the fragility of flesh, but the darkness of the human soul. Flagellants roamed the land, men who whipped themselves bloody in public squares, believing that pain could purify sin. They sang hymns of repentance, carrying banners that read, "Death to the sinners, death to the unclean." But their processions only spread the disease further, and still, the dead kept coming. No rank offered protection. In France, Queen Jeanne of Navarre was struck down. In England, the king's daughter, Princess Joan, on her way to marry a Spanish prince, died before reaching Bordeaux. Entire royal courts fled their palaces, yet the plague found them all the same. Economies collapsed, fields lay untended, ships rotted in harbors, the hum of cities fell silent. In Florence, 2/3 of the population vanished. In Venice, 9 out of 10 priests were dead. In England, villages stood empty, ghost towns reclaimed by weeds. Yet for those who survived, life itself changed. The shortage of labor gave peasants new power. The value of work rose. The feudal order, the rigid hierarchy of lords and serfs, began to crumble. The plague had not only destroyed lives, it had destroyed the old world. By 1351, the Black Death's first great wave had run its course. The dead numbered beyond counting. In 4 years, half of Europe was gone. And yet, the survivors were forever changed. Art grew darker, haunted by death. Church walls filled with paintings of skeletons and skulls, dance macabre, the dance of death. Writers spoke of apocalypse, of divine judgment. Children grew up never knowing a world without funerals. But the plague was not finished. It would return again and again in waves for centuries. In 1361, in 1374, in 1400. Each outbreak smaller, yet each a reminder. The shadow was never far. Modern science would one day find its culprit. Yersinia pestis, a bacterium living in fleas, carried by rats and passed to humans through bites or contact. But in the 14th century there was no such knowledge. Only terror and superstition. The survivors called themselves the remnant. They had lived through the end of the world and seen it reborn in plague's image. Even today, beneath the streets of London, Paris, and Venice lie vast plague pits, the resting places of millions. Bones stacked upon bones, nameless, countless. Archaeologists uncover them still, their teeth carrying traces of the ancient microbe, frozen in time. DNA sequencing has confirmed what medieval healers could not, that the same pathogen responsible for the 14th century pandemic still exists today, dormant but alive in the rodent populations of the world. The Black Death never truly died. It waits. But the most haunting discovery of all is not scientific, it's human. Letters, diaries, and last testaments, voices from the edge of extinction, speak of love, fear, and hope that refuse to die. One monk in Avignon wrote, "I saw the world turn pale, and I heard the cry of the dying, but I also saw the sun rise again, and knew that we had not been forsaken." In the face of annihilation, humanity endured. The Black Death was not merely a disease, it was a mirror. It showed humanity what it was, stripped of illusion. It revealed the fragility of faith, the cruelty of fear, the power of resilience. In its aftermath came transformation. From the ashes of despair, new ideas bloomed, the seeds of medicine, of public health, of rebirth. Some historians say that without the Black Death, there could have been no Renaissance. That death itself, in devouring the world, cleared the way for a new one to begin. And yet, in the quiet corners of the earth, in ruined abbeys, forgotten catacombs, and beneath ancient cemeteries, the whisper still lingers. A reminder that all empires fall, that all lives are fragile, and that nature's smallest creation can undo the mightiest of civilizations. The plague was not just an event, it was a reckoning, and its echo still follows us. Because though centuries have passed and medicine has advanced beyond medieval imagination, the truth remains. Every age believes it has conquered death, until death returns. When we speak of the Black Death, we speak not of numbers, but of souls, of the silence that filled the streets of Florence, of the candles that burned in empty churches, of the hands that buried loved ones and never touched again. It was the darkest chapter in human history, and yet, from it, humanity emerged changed, more cautious, more curious, more alive, because when the world burns, what remains is not the ashes, but the will to begin again. And so the story of the plague that devoured the world is not just one of death, but of survival, of a species that looked into the face of extinction and chose to live.